You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has those days.
They do.
I have made a mistake, dear listeners. I'm not going to go into it. Just know that I have made a mistake and it pains me greatly.
She's stressed about it. And we've all been there. That kind of mistake where you're just like dwelling on it forever. And then within a week and a half, you're like, wait, what was I stressed out about? And it goes away. But
I'll check in next week to let everyone know how my stress levels are.
Yeah. We're going to need it. We're going to need an update. We're going to forget next time I record to even check in about it because it's going to be that much of a non-issue. So
hopefully.
I hope our listeners are curious.
I know it's really not exciting. I just can't say for privacy reasons.
Yes. And, but I like keeping our listeners on their toes, but I also feel like it just makes us boring to like say, we're stressed about this thing, but we can't talk about it. Sorry.
Yeah. Boring or mysterious. That's us. We are Two Girls, One Crossword, your favorite weekly Podword Crosscast. I'm Grace Topinka, the boring one.
Yeah, she's boring. And I'm Chelsea Rowan, the boring one times
No,
two.
You're the mysterious one.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Hi, I'm Chelsea Rowan, the mysterious one.
I think we did a poll once asking who our listeners felt like they knew better, and they said me for some reason.
No, I think they said they don't know you. Like, right?
No, I thought they said they know me better. Even though
I feel like I talk way too much. I feel like
you're the type more to, spill more about, have loose lips.
I got loose lips. It's true.
Versus I keep my cards close to my chest, but
and her heart on her sleeve, but you can't see her sleeve because it's inside her jacket.
No way to know.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. We hopefully we balance each other out, but who knows? I might just be really annoying. So
anything's possible. Speaking of
thanks
polls,
for your constant support.
Should we jump into our poll of Palooza from last week?
Yeah, let's do it.
We asked our Twitter followers, today's poll is simple. Have you ever witnessed a can-can? Options were no, never, yes, or yes at the Moulin Rouge, or I can.
Whoa.
And we actually got a decent amount of votes on this one. However, 56% of the people said yes, they have seen it, but not at the Moulin Rouge. And then 44% said no, they've never seen it. And none of our listeners can. At least none of our Twitter followers can.
And no one's been to the Moulin Rouge and seen the can.
I guess not. I feel like, I definitely went by the Moulin Rouge when I was in Paris, but tickets are expensive, like you said.
Yeah, they're pricey. I didn't even think I got up to Montmartre when I was in Paris because I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but when I was traveling to Paris, I was so broke. I was 18 years old. I was lucky to buy like a $3 euro foot-long glizzy on the side of Champs-Élysées.
They do have those there.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That's nice after a night of drinking. Just wash it all down with a glizzy. The French don't get hangovers. Actually,
I didn't even have money to drink. Okay, we met a man on the train that went through the Channel, which we've done a topic on the Channel. And this man sat across from me and my, college roommate at the time. And we were like, hey, what's something we could do in Paris for free? We have no money. And he was like, he looked at us like we had 7 heads. But he did give us a really great list for free things to do in Paris. There's not a lot, actually. There's a lot more free things to do in like London, to be fair. But
Paris is not free.
Glizzies weren't free either. So,
but they're economical.
They are economical. Yeah. Couldn't get up to Montmartre, though.
Well,
I feel like there's Parisians kind of look down on it's the Sacré Coeur, the Sacred Heart Church. I think it's up there close to.
Oh, I'm sure they look down on anything touristy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fair. But also the French are so mean to tourists. Yeah. Tourists. Although I heard that's only in Paris. And it's not possibly so much elsewhere in France.
I did try to use my French, my high school level French, my 5 semesters of high school French while I was there.
They're like, you stupid American.
And they immediately start speaking English to me. And I'm like, I'm trying. Sorry.
Well, Alex claims that if you are polite and try to use French, then they're nice to you.
That's
because
what I
it's
heard.
more so they don't like when you come in and you're just like, hey, can you help me? Like,
Right.
do you speak English or not?
Mm-hmm,
But I don't know how many people actually do that. Anyways, this is not a French hate group, even though I feel like it does come up a lot. And do any of our listeners live in France?
Yeah. Who
Please
knows?
let us know. Inquiring minds.
Yeah, I feel like our number one listener group is the US, of course, followed by the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't looked in a while, but there's some Australia. Yep.
I wonder. Guess we'll get our yearly wrap up.
I guess we will. We'll check in at the end of the year.
Like always.
Like always. Should we move into our hits and shits?
Let's do it. We're efficient today. You're welcome, listeners.
We're moving.
Listeners,
Oh, but
do you
I guess
like when we're efficient or when we
just
faff
about?
I've been watching a Great British Bake Off.
What have you been watching?
Against my will, I've been watching it. Okay, don't get excited.
I wouldn't call this excitement so much as indignation. It's fine. It's fine. We don't have to talk about it. But okay.
Sorry, about the
Are we
Great
about
British
to faff
Bake Off.
about?
Well, I just want to faff for a little bit. It's like sometimes I feel like the stuff that they make on there does not seem appetizing. Like
Give me an example. Yeah.
I don't know. Like sometimes they use like weird or like ingredients that I don't consider to be like that tasty. They're interesting, but I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I really want to eat this like pistachio orange fennel cake.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I totally agree. I think there's something to be said about the uniqueness of flavors on Great British Bake Off.
Or like,
I am picky about dessert flavors in general. So anytime it's not like your traditional like chocolate, vanilla flavoring, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'd eat that.
True. I think personally, I don't like fruit in my desserts. So, and a lot of the desserts seem to be fruit-based.
Yeah.
But I understand that people like it. But
yeah. So,
I mean, it's all amazing what they can make. Like, I'm impressed,
truly.
But I'm not exactly like salivating to eat this.
I feel like your favorite part of the show might be the technical challenge because that's the most drama of.
I do like, yeah. And
show.
I like thinking like if anyone's like romantically involved and.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
And the hosts are weird.
Yeah. Paul Hollywood. How is that his real name? Paul Hollywood, and before when it was Mary Berry. Those cannot be their real names.
I loved Mary Berry. But I'm talking about the
Prue. The actual host, not the judges.
Host, yeah.
They're I don't remember their names.
They're a weird group.
They're a very strange like duo. Because they're not really a duo. They're just like two different comedians. They're very
random. Yeah.
Yeah. And just like visually.
Visually.
From each other.
Yeah. I do like Great British Bake Off. I haven't watched in a while. One of the things I find most endearing is when they do sketches of the desserts that each of the bakers is going to make.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's really cute. I do have to say in like more recent seasons, I'm not watching the current season right now. In the more recent seasons, I've found that their like signature challenge, like challenges are tending more on the gimmicky side. Like I don't like when they had to do like a cookie mobile or things like that. I feel like something that I like about Great British Bake Off is when they stick to more traditional desserts and things like that. But they've been on air for so long that
they gotta switch it up now.
And I'm like, let's keep it traditional. I feel like I go ultra like, no, this isn't how it should be. But that's just me. Anyway, Grace is watching Great British Bake Off. That's a shocker. Shocker and a half.
I know. It's because Alex and her mom watch it. So sometimes, like, if we're with her family, we start watching it. Mm-hmm. It's fine to have in the background while I crochet.
While she crochets. Before we go into hits and shits, I feel like we have to let our listeners know. I mean, by the time they're hearing this, it won't matter. But we are not releasing. This episode is being recorded in advance and will be released at a later date. So the puzzles we talk about aren't necessarily going to be current for the day it's being released. I believe this is going to be released on October 10th. And so these puzzles are...
We're recording October 7th, 2015. So...
Yeah. So it's pretty old. We have to... We hopped back in the time machine to do this one. Yeah. So don't be mad. Be glad. We just got some stuff going on, so we're trying to make sure we don't miss too many weeks of releases.
Yeah. Sorry, we have lives, you know.
We do. We got a life too. But yeah, I guess let's hop into hits and shits. Do you want to start?
Sure. Monday, 26th, New York Times by Margaret Seikel. 18 down, like pizzas and piazzas. Piazzas. Italian.
Italiano.
24,
Nice.
speaking of GBO. Cookie to the Brits. Biscuit.
Biscuits.
And what about
Weird.
digestives?
Digestives? Yeah.
That's another British thing.
What's going on there? And then also, like, some of the things that the Brits eat, like, sorry, Brits, but there was one challenge on the Great British Bake Off where they had to make, like, a standing meat pie. Essentially, like, they had to make, like, a puff pastry type thing that stood, like, almost like a loaf of bread that you would take out of a tin, like a square loaf of bread, and you fill it with, like, meat, like lamb and venison and whatever, and then you cover it with more puff pastry, and it's this like block, this cube of pastry and meat. And I think in theory there's nothing wrong with pastry and meat combined, but like the difficulty with something like that is how wet is it going to be on the inside? Is it going to be cooked all the way through? Are you going to have a soggy bottom? Anyway, it's very strange possible to me.
Well,
that point, just put it in like
do they ever have like
tin.
cookies, like a nice gooey cookie on Great British Bake Off?
No.
The Brits don't eat cookies.
Because that's not a cookie to them, a biscuit, if you will. A biscuit to a
Brit has to have a cracker.
Has to have a snap to it, which is strange to me because if my cookies have a snap, then I feel like I've failed.
Yeah. Well, that's the Brits for you. Sorry to all our British listeners.
Yeah, if you're British, do you actually have gooey cookies? Like,
do you ever just bite into a nice gooey chocolate chip, or you're eating your like digestives?
Instead of like the snap, when you push it into, break it in two, you have like the gooey chocolate bridging the two pieces of cookie.
Speaking of, I may have you ask if you can bring desserts next weekend. Okay.
I figured I've already got the stuff, so don't stress about it.
I was going to send out
cookies.
A text. Anyway. Yes, Chelsea and I are finally hanging out for Halloween for all of our listeners who are waiting on the edge of their seat to see if we would ever actually make Halloween plans. It's happening.
We've done it.
Back to the puzzle. 34 down. A big one might be standing in a concert hall. Ovation.
Ooh.
Thought that was cute.
I did this puzzle and I didn't remember the answer to that one. Typical. That's crazy.
Classic you. That's all I have for that one.
Okay. I'm going to take us to the Sunday, September 25th Washington Post by Evan Bernholz.
Oh, yes.
So I think, first of all, before we get into the theme of this, which is a lot of fun, I just want to shout out Evan and to say thank you for your shout out to our podcast on your blog. It's a big honor, as most of our listeners know we gush about the Sunday WAPO like almost every week. And every time there's a theme that we love, which is every Sunday, we're like, how does he do it? Or
he did it again.
Exactly. So yeah, Evan had a little shout out to our podcast in his blog. Thanks, Evan. Specifically related to the episode, let's see here, 134, Miss Jackson, if you're Astine. There was a clue in Evan's puzzle specifically related to Shirley Jackson and Anne Rice, 22 across. Like stories by Shirley Jackson and Anne Rice. The answer was macabre. And yeah, we have an episode where Grace talks about Shirley Jackson, and that is episode 134. We talk about her life, her struggles, her work,
and
her...
Evan shout us out in the blog about the puzzle, because he talked about that clue, saying...
Yes.
We did a topic on it, and it's amazing, and we feel pretty famous. I don't know.
Yeah, we're basically celebrities now, so thanks, Evan, for the love. But I wanted to talk about the theme, as we always do, and we talked about Evan's puzzles. So the puzzle was titled Raise Your Glasses, and the revealer was 17 across. Quote, cheers, and a hint to how 6 words in this puzzle have been raised by one row. And the answer was drink up. And so each themed answer has a drink hidden in the answer, an alcoholic drink specifically. So, for example, the answers were spread across 3 clues. I'll give you... It's easier to, like, I don't know, explain. Here, well, you know, I struggle with explaining themes, so let's give it a shot. I'll start first by talking about the 25 across, 22 across, and the 26 across clues and answers. So altogether, those answers spell log cabins. And the very first clue, 25 across, is retreats in the wood. But the answer is only 3 letters long, and it's spelled L-O-G. And you're like, what could this be? But on the line above where 25 across would be filled in is 22 across. The stories by Shirley Jackson and Anne Rice, and the answer was macabre. But inside macabre is cabs, C-A-B-S, for like Cabernets.
Mm-hmm.
And then 26 across is office holders, so inns. So if you took all of those together, log cabs and inns, you get log cabins.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, conceit of this is that drinks are up. So the cab is 1 line above the log and the inns answers. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
And so I'll give you one more example because it includes my favorite type of alcoholic drink. And this spans across 49, 45, and 51 across. The answer was dragging out, 49 across, prolonging. So the answer, dragging out. But it was drag, 45 across, which sits above 49 across. Dodge machines, which is engines. And inside engines is gin,
mm-hmm.
G-I-N, my favorite alcoholic drink. And then it ends with 51 across, form of arthritis, gout. So if you put drag, gin, and gout, dragging out is the answer. So drinks up, gin was above the other 2 answers in that themed answer. So lots of fun. And apparently he made the theme to celebrate his own birthday. So happy belated birthday to Evan.
Happy birthday.
Drinks up.
So what sign is he? I don't think he's a Libra
that was
yet.
September 25th is almost a Libra.
It's between
right?
Virgo and Libra, but I'm not sure what it is.
It's definitely a Libra.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. My niece is a Libra and born just the day before, I believe.
My niece is a Libra. But she's born later in October.
Oh my God. Evan's a Libra. What can you say?
Classic.
But yeah, thanks again, Evan. Happy belated.
Yes, thank you. That was amazing. And happy birthday.
What else you got, kid?
Well, from the Tuesday New York Times by Peter Coders or Ketters, I have 2 shits. But I have some hits too. But I'll talk about the shits first. They were just like proper nouns. Or it wasn't really a native because they weren't crisscross, but they were right on top of each other, and they were like spelled so strangely that there was no way I would ever get it. Some people may listen to this clue and be like, oh my God, that's obvious, but I didn't know either of these. So 32 across was hockey great Jaromir blank.
Jaromir Jagr. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. But I don't know anything about hockey, and his last name is spelled Jagr.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, what the heck word is this when I'm,
Yeah.
But then right underneath it, 39 across, with 70 across, 1997 film in which Peter Fonda plays a beekeeper. It's called Yuli's Gold, but spelled U-L-E-E-S. I had never heard of that movie before.
Yeah,
it was just like either. 2 in a row, like right on top of each other. I'm like, this is, you either know it or you don't.
Yeah, I know Peter Fonda. Don't know that film. But I do know Jaromir Jagr because he used to play on the Flyers for a little bit, which was my hockey team. And also, yeah, that's like extremely niche knowledge for somebody who does not have any interest in hockey as a sport. And also he's like an older player too. So like, it's not like he's like a current great that she might hear about in the news today. Mm-hmm. He was playing like at the tail end of his career on the Flyers. So that was like the early 2000s. Anyway, but it's an odd piece of information that I have retained, but
well, I wish we were doing this puzzle together, but I do have some hits from the puzzle.
Okay.
18 down. What a jelly donut lacks. The answer is hole.
But okay, I saw this. A jelly donut has a hole.
True, but not all the time, because sometimes it's like more of a just round disc with no hole.
You have to like get the jelly in some way.
Oh, true. I think they mean like, yeah.
I know exactly what they mean.
Yeah. well, take it up with little shorts.
I will.
17 across, fencing partners, question mark. And the answer was neighbors.
Neighbors.
50 across, chain of Polynesian islands. And the answer is lay.
Yes, this was a good one.
And then 29 across, candy from a head. And it was Pez.
We've talked about Pez quite a few times here. I feel like it's one of those topics that you and I have come
We're
across.
Skating around.
We're skating around. You may see it yet. Let me see. Speaking of shits, I do have a small shit from this week. I'll start with that. From the Monday, September 26th, New Yorker by Natan Last. 13 down. Poet who wrote, quote, everything is holy, everybody's holy, everywhere is holy, end quote, in a, quote, footnote to one of his poems. And the answer is Allen Ginsberg. I'm done. I'm done with the Allen Ginsberg.
For good reason.
Stuff. For good reason. And like, I get it. He's part of the literary canon and whatever, but just Google Allen Ginsberg Nambla, and then if I see it in a crossword again, I'm going to put you in my hitch and shits again. I just can't do it anymore. I can't do it. I'm sorry. Similar to like Chanel. Let's just all collectively move on.
Do Chanel from that, well, no, Emma Roberts, Scream Queens.
There you go. Or Coco can be literally anything else, but it doesn't have to be Coco Chanel. Anyway, so that's my shit. That's a legitimate shit. We haven't had like a legitimate shit in a while, I feel like. But I did like this puzzle overall. 12 across. Some plants with overseas origins, question mark. Sleeper agents.
Nice.
Nice, right? 15 across. Country song, question mark.
Anthem.
National anthem, yes. Love where your brain's at. And then 49 down. This is for you. I love when I get reminded of films that I've seen ages ago, but I think fit your vibe. And since it's spooky season, this is very relevant. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, filmmaker blank Lily Amirpour. And the answer is Anna. So it's Anna Lily Amirpour, an incredible filmmaker. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is an Iranian vampire like horror type story.
I've seen it.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you hadn't seen this, like, you need to, because it, like, is a good vibe. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't know if it holds up, but at the time,
it's been a while since I've seen it too, but yes.
Vibe. She also skateboards, this vampire, so
she's a perfect vampire.
Positive vibes all around from that. What else you got, kid?
I have a couple hits from the Friday New York Times by David Karp.
Okay.
20 across, people person, question mark. And it was sexiest man alive. 42 across, the ties that bind, question mark. And the answer is corset.
Oh,
corset.
Nice.
Corset. 53 across, makes a house a home, say. And the answer is nests. Which I love to do.
Cute.
49 across, stretches for the rest of us, question mark. Nap times. It's for the rest of us to rest.
Very good. Those are some good
and then
clues.
60 across, shoe with holes.
Crocs.
Yes.
Nice.
And then I learned something new. 44 down, a Martian day, 24 hours, 39 minutes, and 35 seconds. And the answer is Sol. And that's a day on Mars is called a Sol. And it's about 40 minutes longer than a day on Earth. Sometimes I could really use an extra 40 minutes.
You're telling me.
So.
Should we go to Mars?
Maybe. That's all I got from that one.
All right, I'm going to take us to the Friday, September 23rd, New York Times. This is a little bit older, I think, but this was by Eric Agard, 21 across. Some sculptures and sexts. S-E-X-T-S, not like a religious sex. The answer is nudes.
Nice.
Very nice. 27 across, limbo prerequisite, and the answer is pole. We talked about limbo on the podcast. 33 across, this was for me exclusively. Pisces, but not Aquarius. And the answer is water sign, because I think everybody thinks Aquarius is a water sign. It's not. It's an air sign.
It's an air sign.
We're just like different like that. So, and then 50 down, this is for you exclusively. They're separated at some salons.
Strands? Curls?
Toes.
Toes, oh. Yeah, as they should be. I hope
as they
everyone's
should be.
stretching their toes.
Do
like
it.
I've asked you to.
Mm-hmm. I've started. I
There
haven't
we go.
stopped. It's been years at this point. You have anything else?
Yes, I had a bunch that I liked from the September 28th New Yorker by Paolo Pasco.
Samesies. You take the lead.
Okay, I have a lot, but I'll go through them. 31 across. 90s hip-hop duo known for wearing their clothes backward. Crisscross.
Mm-hmm. Spelled with K's, which is just like the perfect name. Yeah.
37 across. House parties for short. State reps.
Mm-hmm.
53 across. Santana hit about a woman who reminds the singer of a West Side Story.
Mm-hmm.
Maria.
Maria. Yeah. So good.
6 down. Or no. Yes. 6 down. Stands up for something without standing up. ? Takes a knee.
Loved that one.
7 down. Comic strip dog once depicted solving a Sudoku to John's surprise. And the answer is Odie. Which I feel like Odie comes up in the in crosswords a lot, and he's always like, Garfield's brother or friend or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like it just made me laugh thinking of him solving a Sudoku. Yep. 11 down. Not exactly ... in quotes. Kinda sorta. And then 53 down. caltechrejects.com redirects to its website, and the answer is MIT.
It's like the pettiest of the petty, and I love it. I live for that. Amazing. Is that all you had from this one? I liked 40 across, like the titular falcon of a 1941 film noir, and the answer is Maltese. So the film is called The Maltese Falcon, and it stars none other than Humphrey Bogart. Okay, and we talked about Humphrey on episode 135. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I just loved your episode title for this one. So episode 135, Mother, May I Sleep with the Un-American Activities Committee, ?
Mm-hmm.
So listen to that episode if you're interested in, bogey bacall romance drama. But yes, also watch the film. It's pretty good. Let's see. And then I also liked 21 down, social media aesthetic embodied by, quote, putting on a blazer and reading Dostoevsky per a Vox article. And the answer is dark academia, which it's spooky season. And I feel like dark academia has spooky vibes. It's like very
I really need
witching season at Oxford type sitch.
Yeah. I need to lock down on my vibe.
Yeah, me too.
Anyways, just another thing I need to work on.
Just struggling constantly. But that's all I got for this week.
Me too. I'm worried that we have the same topic.
I'm worried that we have the same topic as well.
God, I hope we don't.
We constantly stress ourselves out by this.
Well, just flip the coin and we'll find out soon
enough.
All
right. I'm flipping the coin now.
I just know we have the same one.
It's heads.
All right.
Okay, let me take a sip of water and let's figure this out. My topic comes from the Tuesday, September 27th New York Times. Peter Coders. 9 down, blank, trench. Deepest place in the 10 down. And the 10 down's answer was ocean. And so the answer is Marianas Trench.
We're Gucci.
We don't have the same topic. Okay. Are you from the same puzzle, though?
No.
Okay, so
I was saying no when you first said. I was like, no, we're good.
She was shaking her head at me, and I was like, oh my God, is this like a no, we have the same topic, or a no, we're good. We're in the clear. I'm talking about Marianas Trench today, which is funny because, I struggle with ocean stuff, but I'm keeping it light.
That is a fear for Chelsea.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it. Go listen to any of the other episodes where I've talked about it if you're curious to know more. Yeah, Marianas Trench. What do you know about Marianas Trench? You know anything?
It's the deepest trench in the ocean.
The deepest trench in the ocean. It is actually the deepest oceanic trench on Earth, which is exactly what you said. Essentially, it's the lowest point on Earth that we know about. That's technically reachable. Well,
that's the caveat that we know of.
That we know about. It is located in the Western Pacific Ocean, about 124 miles east of the Mariana Islands. It is a crescent-shaped trench, and it measures about 1,580 miles in length. So it's pretty long. Mm-hmm. The maximum known depth of Marianas Trench is approximately 36,037 feet, give or take 82 feet, which translates to approximately 6.825 miles deep. That's crazy.
Thanks, I hate it.
Yeah. The super deep area has its own name. It's called Challenger Deep, and it is located at the southern end of Marianas Trench. And we'll talk a little bit more about Challenger Deep in a minute. So at the bottom of Marianas Trench, the water above exerts a pressure of 15,750 psi, which is more than 1,071 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. And if you remember anything about atmospheric pressure, which we talked about in the espresso episode, you need 9 to 10 atmospheric pressure to pull a perfect shot of espresso. So just imagine how many espressos you could pull with this kind of pressure.
Amazing.
Okay,
should open a cafe down there.
Really should. So yeah, the temperature at the bottom of the trench is 34 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a lot warmer than I would have thought it to be. But what do I know? I don't know much about the ocean.
No, me neither.
So when and how was Marianas Trench discovered? The trench was first sounded in 1875 during what is known as the Challenger expedition. So depth sounding, or just known as sounding, is the measuring of the depth of a body of water, and you use this data to essentially make maps of the ocean floor. Okay? So the Challenger expedition took place between 1872 and 1876 and was an overall scientific program that made many discoveries to map out the topography of the ocean floor. The expedition was named after the ship that undertook the trip, the HMS Challenger, and it was initiated by a bunch of Brits. Go figure. Hello, Brits. We're here with you today, and you're here with us. I'll name a couple of them in case anybody out there is a history nerd and these names sound familiar to you, but we're not really going to be talking about these guys at all. They were William Benjamin Carpenter, Charles Wyville Thompson, Sir John Murray, Captain George Nares, Commander John McClure, and many others. The ship, the HMS Challenger, was originally a Royal Navy ship, but it was modified for the expedition to include labs for natural history and chemistry. Over the course of the Challenger expedition, the ship traveled approximately 68,890 nautical miles, which they were essentially just surveying and exploring. Like, that's what the point of this expedition was for. It wasn't specifically to find Marianas Trench, just so happened that they found Marianas Trench on this expedition. The resulting report after this expedition, people are really great at naming reports. I'll tell you that. It was, quote, report of the scientific results of the exploring voyage of HMS Challenger during the years 1873 to 76.
They really need something more catchy if they want to get some readers.
Yeah, I know. I definitely wouldn't have read that back in the day. But yeah, during the expedition, Marianas Trench was discovered, specifically on March 23rd, 1875. The crew used weighted ropes to do the sounding. So essentially they would just like weight these ropes down and then drop it and see how far down the ropes would go, and then be like, oh shit, it's that long, that deep, whatever. So later expeditions, so they did the sounding with weighted ropes, and they recorded a depth of 4,475 fathoms, which translates to approximately 26,850 feet. That's crazy. Later expeditions used modern equipment, and they confirmed that the Challenger crew had found the southern end of Marianas Trench, the deepest known place on the ocean floor. And then even more modern soundings have found even deeper locations in the same area, measuring up to 6,012 fathoms. So very, very deep. Fun fact about the Challenger expedition, it was the first scientific expedition to take pictures of icebergs.
Ooh.
They got very close to Antarctica, but they didn't actually land in Antarctica. They also weren't the people to discover Antarctica, but let's just say, fun fact. More details about Marianas Trench. So Marianas Trench is part of the Western Pacific system of oceanic trenches, so it's not the only one. The area where Marianas Trench exists coincides with the point where two adjacent tectonic plates collide, one of them being forced below the other, creating this big trench. Tectonic plates scare the bejesus out of me.
I know. They're moving around down there. Let's everyone just stay put for a bit.
Let's just sit still for like half a second, please. And so measuring the depth of Marianas Trench is an incredibly difficult task for many reasons. Namely, like the challenges are mainly technical, and mostly it's how do you get equipment to this extremely remote area, right? And once you get the equipment there, to get it to actually find the deepest point is very difficult because every time it goes down, a new number comes up. So it's like, it's not a very flat surface down there, you know? So it can be like, I don't want to say mountainous, but, you know, it's not flat. So they got divots here and divots there and so on and so forth. The first recorded sounding, as we've already discussed, was in 1875 during the Challenger expedition, and they sounded a depth to be about 26,850 feet. The second sounding was in 1899, done on the ship the USS Nero Deep, and they sounded a depth of around 31,693 feet. And this sounding wasn't exceeded until a 32,197-foot hole was found in the area 30 years later. And also, I just want to know how much of this is like, have these soundings, like, is the ocean floor changing, you know, with time? And like the more time passes, something could get deeper, or like maybe the plates shift a little bit and something else happens. I don't really know. If you're a scientist and you know, let me know. Yeah. So, okay. Then in 1957, a Soviet research ship sounded a new world record depth of 36,056 feet in Challenger Deep. And then in 1984, a Japanese exhibition sounded a depth of 35,840 feet. And then in 2011, a U.S. research team sounded a depth of 36,070 feet. So it's deep down. It's deep. Very deep under the ocean. And then this is like a side note, but in 1997, another deep hole east of Challenger Deep was discovered, and it's named Serena Deep. And the depth was reported as between 34,911 feet and 35,463 feet. So just as deep, if not deeper than potentially, if we do another sounding sometime soon, as Challenger Deep. So there's some deep points of the ocean. Fun fact about Challenger Deep, which this is the deepest point of Marianas Trench and of the ocean. If you were to take Mount Everest, hypothetically, and place it into the trench at the deepest point, its peak would still be underwater by more than 1.2 miles.
Wow.
That's how deep Challenger Deep is.
That's crazy. This might be a dumb question, but like, how far have people actually gone down?
I'm about to get there.
Okay.
She's dying to know.
I need to know.
So the next heading of my research was, you may be wondering if people have tried to descend to the bottom of, Marianas Trench.
I was wondering.
She was wondering.
How'd you know?
I just felt like at this point, your curiosity would be there, you know? Well, they have. Interestingly enough, only 2 like prominent descents have happened. The first was on January 23rd, 1960. The ship was a French-built U.S. Navy-operated bathyscaphe, which is a type of submersible, like submarine is like the closest thing I can describe it. It's not a submarine, but it's called a submersible. And it was called the Trist or the Trieste. And on the ship was Swiss ocean engineer Jack Picard and U.S. naval officer Don Walsh. They made a record dive to the to Challenger Deep, 35,814 feet below sea level. Like they got all the way down in there. Not below sea level, but just like down to the ocean floor. The next descent was on March 26th, and this may be interesting to you, to 2012, 50 years after the first attempt. It was made by none other than Canadian filmmaker James Cameron. Titanic director.
Crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
And he piloted a submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger to 35,756 feet. And this descent established a world record for a solo descent.
Why would he do that?
We're about to get to that.
Okay.
So before the first dive in 1960, scientists had debated whether life could exist under such extreme pressures, like deep below the ocean floor where no light could get to, right? But at the bottom of the ocean floor, when the Trieste went down, the first ever descent, their floodlight illuminated a creature that one of the pilots, Picard, thought was a flatfish. And so Picard described the moment in his book about the journey, quote, "Here, in an instant, was the answer that biologists had asked for decades. Could life exist in the greatest depths of the ocean? It could," end quote. Still, Scientists knew very little about the types of organisms that could reside there. And a lot of people thought that maybe what Picard had seen was a sea cucumber, which is not alive technically. So the thought was that the pressure of the water, we're talking about 1,071 atmospheric pressure, right, was so great in the trench that the calcium couldn't exist. So bones of vertebrates would literally dissolve because there was so much pressure. So if you have no bones, you can have no fish, right? Which brings me to the Deep Sea Challenge expedition, which is the James Cameron expedition, okay? So the Deep Sea Challenge expedition was a partnership with National Geographic that took director James Cameron, pilot Ron Alum, and a team of engineers, scientists, educators, and journalists to the greatest depths of the ocean. So not just Marianas Trench. They were going everywhere, but Marianas Trench was one of the places that they were going. So James Cameron's dive into Marianas Trench was part of the exhibition, where he was the sole occupant to dive down in a 24-foot-long craft made primarily of highly specialized glass foam.
I wouldn't do that. I'm sorry.
I've seen videos of this on
send
TikTok,
a marine
on
biologist
YouTube.
who loves this down. I'm just a director. I'm not going down there.
It was his dream to do this. It was his dream. And he spent years helping design this craft that went down, which is crazy.
How could he design? He knows how to design that?
He must know people who know how to.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, he got a taste of deep sea diving from the Titanic, and he just couldn't look back. So, but yeah, so he went down and he explored the bottom of Challenger Deep, and his findings were eventually collected into a feature-length documentary, which was released by National Geographic. So the first ever trek into Marianas Trench by the Trieste wasn't able to collect photos or sample, but Cameron and his Deep Sea Challenger submersible were armed with multiple cameras and a mechanical arm for scooping up rocks and animals. Thanks in part to this expedition, it was confirmed that there was life in Marianas Trench, and that the life in Marianas Trench is surprisingly diverse considering the harsh conditions. So, animals are able to survive in complete darkness and extreme pressure, with food being so sparse, think about it like it's super far below sea, really far for things to come from land, not only just land, but also if something dies on the surface, it would have to fall all the way down. And think about all the predators that exist at the top of the ocean, all the way down into Marianas Trench, right? So terrestrial plant matter will rarely find its way to the bottom. And yes, dead plankton sinking from the surface have to drop thousands of feet and pass other predators before getting into Challenger Deep. So how do these animals survive? Instead, some microbes rely on chemicals rather than actual food. It's chemicals such as methane or sulfur. And then other creatures do eat other marine life that already lives down there. The three most common organisms at the bottom of Marianas Trench are xenophytophores, amphipods, and small sea cucumbers. So, xenophytophores resemble giant amoebas, and they eat by surrounding and absorbing their food. Amphipods are shiny shrimp-like scavengers, and they're often found in deep trenches in the ocean. And it was a mystery about how they would survive because their shells dissolve in highly pressured areas. And so scientists were like, how could these things possibly survive in Marianas Trench with their shells still intact? In 2019, Japanese researchers found out that at least one of the species in Marianas Trench, they use aluminum, which they extract from the seawater to strengthen their shells, which is wild to me.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So during Cameron's 2012 expedition, scientists also spotted microbial mats in the Serena Deep, that's the deep hole right next to Challenger Deep. That's not technically part of Marianas Trench. And these clumps of microbes feed on hydrogen and methane released by chemical reactions between seawater and rocks. That's how they survive.
Wow. And they're just hanging out there right now doing that.
They're just doing that right now. You should, when you get off this call, you should go on TikTok and just search James Cameron Marianas Trench or something, because the videos there are really interesting, and to see these little things crawling around on the ocean floor, you're and this is the first time they're seeing light with his big flashlight and stuff. So it's crazy to think about.
It's probably tough for them.
Yep. And then I'll talk about the region's top predator. It's a fish called the Mariana snailfish, and apparently it's deceptively vulnerable looking. And it lives at a depth of about 26,200 feet. The snailfish's small, pink, and scaleless body hardly seems capable of surviving in such a punishing environment. This is from the National Geographic website. But the animal appears to dominate its ecosystem, going deeper than any other fish and exploiting the absence of competitors by eating up the plentiful invertebrate that inhabit the trench.
Well, there you have it.
Smart.
Yeah.
You can get down there. If you can get down there, you got food aplenty.
Mm-hmm.
Food aplenty. Yeah, and I'm going to end with saying that Marianas Trench in 2009 was established as a U.S. national monument, which is hilarious to me. Because yes, Mariana Islands and Guam, which are right there, are quote unquote territories of the United States. So that's why.
That's dumb.
That's dumb. But that's what they did. And yeah, that's Marianas Trench for you. I was like,
interesting.
Damn. Yeah.
I never want to go there, but
I will literally never
I'll
go
let James Cameron go there for me.
Maybe we should watch the documentary at some time.
That could be fun under the right circumstances.
That is, yeah, exactly. It feels like that's like the perfect horror movie for me for October.
That's fair.
Anyway, that's Marianas Trench. Thanks for listening, my friends.
Thanks. I just kept thinking of the Mariana sound from TikTok.
Yeah. Well, I found out that it's Mary on a cross, not Mariana. I didn't realize.
That's like the whole point of the song.
Right. Well, I was like, why is he calling her Mariana on a cross? I was like, that's an interesting way to go about it. But then I was like, oh my God, it's Mary on a cross. Whatever. Mm-hmm. It's fine. It's all good.
My topic is quite a pivot from that.
Are we talking about the sky?
No. Well,
okay.
It's like it's a totally different.
All right. We're about to find out. I'm very excited. Okay.
I thought maybe you would have done this. It is from the September 28th New Yorker by Paolo Pasco. 58 across, Betty Rubble or Betty Boop, e.g. And the answer is toon. And I'm doing Betty Boop.
Very nice. Okay.
She's so cute. Time. She has awakened people like love Betty Boop and they collect all Betty Boop stuff. Mm-hmm. I get it. She's so cute and cool. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But not without controversy. So.
Okay.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
Well, I kind of ruined my opening. I had she's sexy, she's confident, and she's a cartoon. She's Betty Boop.
I think it still hits. It still hits.
Thank you. So I'm going to open with a quote from an article on The Cut that I'll talk more about later, but this quote was very good to open up with. Quote, on the one hand, Betty Boop was a creation of the heterosexual male gaze, with an endless parade of lecherous male characters trying to see under her skirt. Yet, on the other hand, she wore power like a light shawl, her image an in-your-face depiction of unashamed sexuality. She was a stereotype, yet she also defied stereotypes of what a female cartoon characters could do on screen.
Ooh.
So.
Okay.
Betty Boop, I'm sure, everyone knows Betty Boop. She has the cute little short hair with the curls and the hoops, and she wears like a little tiny dress. High heels. She's voluptuous, but has a baby face. So, Betty Boop, she made her first appearance in the Flesher Studios. Flesher Studios is who created Betty Boop. More specifically, I believe his name is Max Flesher, but he owned Flesher Studios.
Okay.
She made her first appearance in a cartoon short called Dizzy Dishes on August 8th, 1930. But she wasn't the Betty Boop that we know today. She was an anthropomorphic poodle who was performing on stage at a jazz club full of other anthropomorphic animals.
Okay.
She didn't have any lines, but her high-pitched singing, her little black dress, invisible garter stole the show, and audiences loved her. So that's why even though she was never meant to be like a recurring character, she was given a human makeover. So they, instead of a dog nose, they gave her a tiny little nose, and they changed her floppy ears to gold hoop earrings.
Okay.
And they started putting her into more cartoons. And she was one of the most successful cartoons in the 1930s. And at that time, cartoons were mainly used to, before movies, as little trailers before movies. But people would come to the movies just to see Betty Boop cartoons.
Cute. Okay.
Flesher Studios, the creator of Betty Boop, was a giant in animation at the time. Its only rival was Disney. And the two studios were very different. So Disney was in California. They were more focused on, idyllic fairy tales, but then Fleischer Studios was in New York, and they would sometimes have like grungy, dangerous urban worlds that their cartoon characters would be in. Fleischer Studios, speaking of another fun movie we could watch together, Fleischer Studios has their own dark version of Snow White, because Snow White was not owned by Disney. You know, it's like all these fairy tales. But they created their own Snow White, starring Betty Boop as Snow White.
Oh my God.
And it's very like surreal and weird. So first of all, Betty Boop has like two characters that were in a lot of cartoons with her. There's Bimbo, who's her dog boy, I think he's like an anthropomorphic dog, and it's her boyfriend or like love interest. And then there's Coco the clown. So those are like her two guys.
I'm with you.
But some things that happen in the Snow White, the evil queen's face morphing into eggs in a frying pan, a tree stump fighting with her co-stars Bimbo and Coco, Betty trapped in an ice block coffin being led down a mountain by dwarfs on skis. So anyways,
I feel like I've seen GIFs of this.
You probably have.
Like this tree scene specifically.
Yes.
But I'm down.
A lot of female cartoons at the time were just female versions of their male counterparts. Like Minnie Mouse was just, a girl version of Mickey Mouse. Or they were tied to their more famous male counterparts like Olive Oyl. But Betty was the main character on her own. And
I feel like Olive Oyl was in that Palooza puzzle, wasn't she?
Yes, she was definitely in, I think she was, talking about Shelley Duvall.
Right. It's just funny to see that Olive Oyl and Betty Boop were in the same puzzle, but yes,
yeah, they
continue.
were around the same time. And Betty always had two leading men in every picture. Most of the time it was Bimbo and Coco, and she also was like never fawning over the men. She was always very confident in the lead. They were fawning over her. An article from the film Daily in 1932 said, quote, Mr. Fleischer gave her a doll-like face with those baby eyes, but also a mature figure with ooh-la-la curves and a bourgeois languor in her walk.
Oh my God.
And Betty, though depicted as a virgin, was aware of her sex appeal, and she would use it to her advantage. But it was also a liability. So men were constantly chasing her down and trying to coerce her into sex. In Boop Oopa Doop, a 1932 short, which name references her famous catchphrase, circus performer Betty returns to her dressing tent to find that her boss is waiting there to assault her. She escapes with Coco's help, singing, "He couldn't take my Boop Oopa Doop away." Or
oh my
Virginia
God.
away.
And this is all before the Haze Code, which, yeah.
Yes. So there were many shorts like this. They were some of the earliest cartoons to depict, like, sexual harassment so explicitly. But she could also be subversive. In one episode, she changes clothes on stage from a dress to a man's suit, and I really want to find that image of her. So yes, like, it's good that she was an independent woman, but also still gross that a lot of times the humor in her shorts were like revolved around men like chasing her,
Right.
Nevertheless, in the dark times of the Great Depression, Betty offered a sexy escape. She was on playing cards, nail polish, cigarette cases, you name it. She was everywhere. But in 1934, the Hollywood censor introduced the Haze Code, which was a new production code which outlined how to approach subjects like sex, dancing, drugs, vulgarity, and crime. An example from the code: excessive and lustful kissing, lustful embraces, suggestive postures, and gestures are not to be shown. So,
yeah, Hollywood used to be really, like, if you watch films from the 30s before the Haze Code, you're like, oh my God. Like, I feel like we have this image of, like, America being very, like, conservative all the time. And it's very much not the case. Like, conservatism really didn't, like, kick in until, or in mainstream media specifically, in like the mid 30s. Things were really risky back in the day, and kind of saucy in a good way.
So yeah, Betty had to undergo a make-under, if you will. She became taller and older, which doesn't mean anything, but her backless dress was replaced with a longer dress that had sleeves and a collar, and her garter belt was never seen again.
Gone.
Instead of singing in the club, Betty was now a teacher, a secretary, a babysitter. This article that I read mentioned that her pre-code character plot lines kind of fed into this anxiety that men had during the Great Depression, that women were like would start stealing their jobs and being independent, and Betty was like an example of that. So that's another reason why she kind of got cut down. But instead of her like usual outlandish, exciting storyline, she found herself in domestic and demure cartoons. So Coco the Clown was replaced with eccentric inventor Grampy, and Bimbo was swapped out for Pudgy, who was a pet puppy. So an example, in A Little Soap and Water, she spent her day bathing Pudgy, who was reluctant to get a bath. In Service with a Smile, she spent her day serving hotel guests. They kept having like more and more requests. This article says, quote, with that kind of sanitation, there's this compulsion to present this normative representation of middle-class sensibilities, and that ends up taking away the joie de vivre. It's no longer something that's exciting to see.
Yeah.
And it's true, the Haze Code was the beginning of the end for Betty Boop. In 1939, Fleischer Studios retired the cartoon, and soon after they were bought out by Paramount. So that's why sometimes you see Betty Boop at Anne's Adventure. But in the decades that followed, Betty Boop was mostly visible through merchandise and brief cameos like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right.
Today, a revamped and family-owned version of Fleischer Studios is trying to bring Betty Boop into the 21st century and keep her image alive. The studio memorializes her as her pre-censorship self.
Yes.
She's a flapper, but she's also a biker, a champion of recycling. She hikes, practices yoga, and uses TikTok slang.
Yes!
But the big question, potentially controversial question, is there a real Betty Boop? Who was Betty Boop created after? So
was she based off of like a black flapper or something like that?
Yes, kind of. I mean, it's not as cut and dry, but there was an article that I mentioned earlier from The Cut called The Forgotten Black Woman Behind Betty Boop by Gabrielle Bellot or Below. Okay, so she says Betty Boop was modeled after multiple women. So Fleischer created the character largely as a parody of then popular white singer Helen Kane and popular American actress Clara Bow. And if you look at pictures of Clara Bow, you totally see it, but the sound is Helen Kane. Okay. So Helen Kane was a jazz singer known for having a babyish voice and even would drop the scat line boop boop a doop.
Okay.
And no one thought the characters were more similar than Helen Kane herself. In fact, in 1932, Kane sued Fleischer Studios for stealing her singing style and catchphrase.
Whoops.
The Fleischer Studios didn't back down. They brought the three women who had voiced Betty Boop, they brought them to court, and each of the women testified that they hadn't imitated Kane, and they did their Betty Boop voices in front of the judge to prove it, and so the judge had to watch footage of Fleischer cartoons and Kane performances.
Oh my god. I would have loved to be there for that sentencing, that trial.
This article says, quote, the court stenographer threw up his hands. Some of the testimony became almost hilarious. The press had a field day with the concept of a performer attempting to protect her popular boops. But imagine being the court stenographer having to write like boop boop a doop.
Over and over again. Oh my god.
The lawsuit made it all the way to the New York Supreme Court, where the Fleischers had multiple witnesses who claimed that they heard boops and baby talk in nightclubs, cabarets, and vaudeville theaters before Kane even became famous.
Ooh.
This is where Baby Esther comes into play. So Baby Esther was a black jazz performer in the 1920s whose real name was Esther Jones. Her voice and scat phrases sound strikingly similar to Helen Kane, and in turn Betty Boop. But this isn't a coincidence because Helen Kane had seen Baby Esther perform in the Cotton Club in 1928. Esther's manager, Lou Walton, revealed that he had coached Esther on how to scat, and Esther repurposed scat techniques into boop oop a doo.
Okay.
During the Kane-Fleischer trial, the defense brought out footage of Baby Esther singing, but sadly Baby Esther had disappeared and was presumed dead by the time the court case was cleared, like in 1934. But that kind of helped, close the case and saying, well, you didn't invent this.
Right.
So
yeah.
You can't just claim that this is yours. However, Helen Kane still became the face most associated with Betty Boop, even though she had stolen her whole thing from Baby Esther.
Okay.
It should also be noted that there were a lot of horrible racist episodes of Betty Boop, just like most early cartoons in America. This article says, quote, it's telling but unsurprising that Fleischer was able to invoke Esther Jones as a legal defense against Kane in one breath and continue to produce such racial stereotypes in the next. So
not surprising.
She wasn't necessarily directly made out of, or made to be a replica of Baby Esther, but she was based on jazz singers at the time, and jazz was, created by Black Americans.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of this is appropriated by white people, and then maybe, Fleischer was, inspired by Kane but it's like ultimately Cain was inspired, quote unquote, by somebody else. So.
Exactly. I'm going to end with one last quote from this article. Quote, "Perhaps it's fitting that Betty Boop is best known in black and white. Her character itself is obviously white, yet would be inconceivable without black artistic tradition, and the same is true of America as a whole." So,
ain't that the truth?
There you have it.
I have a fun story about Betty Boop.
Tell me.
So, well, it's not, whatever. So, my dad likes to buy me like random trinkets and things like that. And one time for Christmas, he bought me a vintage replica, like a replica, not vintage, it's like a vintage in the style of like a vintage lunchbox of Betty Boop. And I was like 17 at the time, and he gave it to me, and I was like, this is the most random gift you've ever given to me. I've never once watched Betty Boop. I've never talked about Betty Boop. And he's like, oh, I thought you like anything vintage. And I'm like, yeah, in theory. It was just like, anyway, that's my story. There's nothing more to it than that. But I was
you
like,
still have it?
I think it's probably in my dad's basement somewhere. Yeah.
Well, I ask you to Google Betty Boop just to see how cute she is, like in all her little. I feel like you would, like looking back, like, yes, she has an amazing vibe. But there's all this controversy when I was doing my research because PBS had posted an article for Black History Month a couple years ago saying like the original Betty Boop was black. But then people were like, well, she wasn't really black. Like the cartoon has always been white. Right. Some people thought that like, oh, Betty Boop originally was a black cartoon and she eventually got whitewashed. And it's like, no, she was always white, but she was stolen from, basically inadvertently based on a black character.
Immediately, as soon as I looked up Betty Boop, like one of the first things was Betty Boop was originally black. And it's like, oh, interesting.
Well, PBS it's like been this huge issue because like PBS wrote this article and then a lot of people were citing it and stuff. If you go on PBS's website now, they've taken down the article and they've rewritten a whole thing saying like, we took down the article because we couldn't verify like the claims it was making and then like kind of explained it more like how it, basically like what I was saying. Right.
Interesting. But yeah, it seems like that got disseminated pretty wide and far.
Yeah. I mean, it is true in a way.
I am loving all the fan art of like a black Betty Boop. She looks amazing.
I know, right?
Oh my God. I love, the vibe is so cute. Be a cute Halloween costume.
Right. Anyways, that's Betty Boop for you. Boop, boop,
wow, that was a bit of an about face from Marianas Trench. Godspeed to you.
How the hell am I going to combine these two? Well, luckily I have a little more time to think about it this week.
Yeah, it's like beep, beep, ba-doop. I'm on the bottom of the ocean floor. I don't know. Yeah. Good luck to you and yours on that one.
Thank you. Well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We will be back to regularly scheduled program with the very next episode. And that was a bunch of non-information, but
if you want to yell at us, you can find us on Twitter at the Good Eve Girls,
or Instagram at the Good Evening Girls,
or TikTok at the Good Eve Girls.
Come on down, stick around, and clown around. And until then, keep curious as always.
Never stop.
Never stop. Because one day you too may be able to go to the bottom of Marianas Trench, just like James Cameron, director of the Titanic, was able to.
Dream big, everyone. Anything is possible with enough money.
Exactly. As long as you are a multimillionaire, you can probably do whatever you want.
The world's your oyster.
It really is. Ocean themes all around. Anyway, until next time, this is goodbye. Signing off.
And good riddance. Smell you later.
Smell you later.